guys, my name is Diana Garcia. I'm a licensed mental health counselor in South Florida. My business and practice is called Nurturing Minds Counseling. Okay, for today's video, we're going to talk about, are you getting hooked or unhooked? So I often ask clients if when we're working together, when they're talking about a choice or a decision and they're really struggling with that, a key question that I tend to ask my clients over and over again is this behavior, is this choice going to move you closer or further away from the life that you want? Or sometimes I'll phrase it, is this behavior going to move you closer or further away from your values, whatever your values are regarding this situation? So when I ask that, and sometimes my clients have gotten so used to it that they're like, oh yeah, I know, further away. But it's still clearly really hard to make a decision that's going to move us closer to our values because something's getting in the way. So this illustration that I'm going to pop up now is done by Russ Harris. He's a pretty popular psychologist in the acceptance and commitment therapy world. And he's done this really great illustration to help illustrate what I'm talking about. So if you can see at the bottom, it says situations, thoughts, and feelings. And then it has two different arrows and then away and towards. And then hooked and unhooked. Okay, so to really hit home what I'm talking about, I'm going to go through and explain just one simple example so you can understand and potentially apply this to your life. So let's say you're faced with a situation that your boss comes up to you and says, hey, you know what, I need you to take on another project. Meanwhile, you're having, so this is a situation, your thought is like, what? Like, oh, I don't, in your head, I don't have the time or energy or space really in my workday to take on another project, right? That's kind of internally the thoughts that are going on in your head. You know, you might even be thinking like, maybe it's not fair. I know I'm definitely over allocated, maybe compared to some of my peers, you know, whatever that story is, but it's like, you just can't, you can't take on this project. But then quickly, you know, your thoughts start to go into like, oh, but I can't say no. Like, what is that going to look like? And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then you start to feel really stressed out, anxious, overwhelmed, and probably also a little frustrated with your boss and the whole situation. So if we look at the bottom of the model, that's kind of the situation that you're presented with. And then these are the thoughts and feelings that are coming up based on this situation. Outside of this example, I also want to note that sometimes certain thoughts and feelings just show up without like a precipitating situation. So nothing happened to trigger these thoughts and feelings, but even so, you're having difficult thoughts and difficult feelings. Okay, so that's just kind of a side note. I'll say, going back to the example, so you have two different, you know, scenarios. I'm really kind of simplifying it here a little bit, but if we're kind of going with this model and illustration, one path is getting hooked. So if you get hooked, what that could look like is, in this instance, you're probably getting hooked by your thoughts and your feelings. So you're getting hooked by this thought of, oh my gosh, I have to say yes. My mind is telling me that I have to say yes to my boss. I can't disappoint her. She always tells me that she counts on me. And I just can't even imagine telling her no, or even just expressing my concerns. Like, I'm already sweating thinking about it. You're also already kind of anxious and your heart's beating. Maybe you're thinking about, there's no way I could deal with the, you know, confrontation, not that it would be a confrontation, but that discussion, and there's no way that I could disappoint her, right? So you're already concerned about these uncomfortable feelings that you won't be able to deal with, right? So you get hooked by kind of the fear of that. You also get hooked by these thoughts that you have to say yes, right? Because your mind's telling you, oh, you can't disappoint her, your boss is making you do it, you want to show up as a team player, you might not, right? So the story is showing up, and so you have to say yes. So if you get hooked by that thought and those feelings, then we jump over to then what does that look like as the behavior? So if you look at the top of the model, that's, so you just take on the project. You don't even say anything. Like, you don't even express your concerns, you don't even talk about how already kind of overwhelmed you are with all your other projects and tasks, and so you just kind of take on the project, you know. But then in terms of maybe at home, you get home and that night you have maybe a couple too many Oreos, right? Because you're stressed out and overwhelmed. Now you have more work. right? And so this would be an away behavior because in that moment, let's say your values in this situation are, assertiveness or self-care or work-life boundaries, whatever that looks like for you. And so really kind of taking on this extra task without even, having a conversation about it, that's a move that's going to go away from your values, right? So that's an away decision, because you also know that means you're going to work late, you're going to get home later, you're not going to be able to maybe go to that 6:30 workout class. So that decision is going to be away, okay? So another scenario, same situation, boss comes up to you, you have the same internal experience, your thoughts and feelings show up. So an example of getting unhooked would look like, so let's say, you have the same story in your head, but then, your mind's even like telling you I have to say yes. Your mind's already replaying like, oh gosh, even if I say something, like that's going to be horrible. She's going to react. She's going to get mad at me. She's going to be frustrated, disappointed, whatever the case is, right? And you're already kind of imagining the worst case scenario. Now, getting unhooked could look like saying, you know what? Let me just take a moment. Let me pause. Let me, see what's going on here. Maybe let me just take a couple deep breaths, kind of center myself, figure out what's happening for me, my body. Maybe I need to calm myself down first. And once you do that, then you kind of tell yourself, you know what? My mind is telling me all these things and I'm already getting nervous about having to have this difficult conversation. But what's important to me here? So if I say yes, I know it means I'm not going to be able to go to my workout class. I know I'm going to get home a lot later. I know I'm going to be more irritated and frustrated. I also might drop the ball in terms of other projects. So, this really is probably not in line with what I want. So what would be maybe something that would be in line? Would be maybe I have a difficult conversation with my boss. Maybe I prepared myself to say, you know what, I'm really overwhelmed. I have too much on my caseload. I really don't think I can take this on. Knowing that conversation could be very difficult for you, especially if you're someone that tends to people please, or if you're someone that tends to be kind of the yes man, which a lot of bosses love, right? And so really kind of noticing that it would be difficult to have that conversation. That's right. In the other scenario, you could have gotten hooked, right? Because you don't want to deal with that. That's really, really hard, right? So getting unhooked though would look like, okay, maybe I have to prepare myself for some tough decisions here, but I can do that. I can move towards. And so that behavior looks like, speaking up to your boss next time, maybe requesting a meeting and saying, you know what, I actually can't take this on. And here's why, right? You can even show up with like a visual of all you have on your plate to really help illustrate why that's not the case. Now, regardless of what the outcome is, and I want to make this clear, right? Because in, this scenario, your boss could easily say kind of tough cookies. And depending on your work environment, that actually might be true. But it's really more about you and your process and really what's going to try to help you move closer to the life you want. And recognizing what's within your control and what's not in your control. And at least in this instance, what is within your control is trying to speak up. Alright guys, if you like this video, please subscribe. Check out my other videos and more videos to come on mental health and different tips that could help. And I encourage you guys to continue nurturing your mind, body, and soul, whatever that looks like for you. Thanks. Have a good one.